Tensura X Villainess by Rimu-chi. Rimurus Pav. I was currently sitting in one of the castle's ornate meeting rooms. With me were Yumachan and Serafina. For some reason, Serafina was blushing furiously, while Yumachan looked mad-glaring at everything except me. I tilted my head in confusion. I didn't recall saying or doing anything that would trigger this kind of reaction. Seal. I called out to her in my mind. Why is Yumachan looking mad and Serafina blushing? Seal sighed heavily, her voice tinged with exasperation. Master, you truly have no idea, do you? If I did, I wouldn't be asking you, right? Fair point, Master. So, what's going on? First of all, Serafina is blushing because, during the audience with the king, you mentioned wanting to claim a blue-haired woman for yourself. She thinks you were talking about her. I blinked in surprise. Well, I can't argue with that. She is practically an exact copy of you. Smug face. Is that so, Master? Yes. Now what about Yumachan? She's jealous. Jealous. Jealous of what? Sigh. You truly haven't realized it yet, have you, Master? Realized what? Never mind. Just focus on the conversation with the Queen. I felt a bead of sweat form as I tried to figure out what Seal was hinting at, but before I could press further, she cut the connection. Yaa. Let's just focus on the Queen, I muttered under my breath. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to become a whole lot more complicated. Yumillias Pav. I was sitting in the meeting room with Rimurusan and Serafina, waiting for the Queen to arrive. And I was mad. The reason? I wasn't entirely sure, but I knew this feeling had started during the audience with the king. Rimurusan had asked for authority to claim anyone he desired, and the king granted it. Then, he mentioned wanting to claim a woman with blue hair. The only blue-haired woman I knew was Serafina, his maid. Was that why I was angry? I couldn't say for certain, but for a moment, it felt like my entire world had turned black. I sighed and glanced at Serafina, who was blushing furiously. Rimurusan, on the other hand, sat there casually, as though nothing significant had happened. Honestly, nothing had happened yet, but still. He looked at me suddenly, and I quickly turned my gaze away. Then he asked, Yumachan, is there any problem? No, absolutely not, I replied curtly. As that's so? He asked, tilting his head. Do you have any idea what the Queen wants to talk to us about? I have no clue, I said, trying to sound indifferent. But I'm thinking it's probably something political. Who knows? Did I do something to make you mad, Yumachan? Because I feel like I've done something wrong here, Rimurusan said, looking genuinely puzzled. I sighed heavily. No, you didn't do anything. But then, under my breath, I muttered, but you did say something. Did you say something, Yumachan? He asked again, leaning slightly forward. No, I didn't say anything, I lied quickly. If you say so, he said, unconvinced. Then he turned to Serafina and asked, Hey, Serafina, stop blushing. What if the Queen gets the wrong idea when she sees you like this? Serafina puffed out her cheeks and said, I can't help it, Rimuru-sama. HMPH. What did I even do, exactly? I'm so lost here, Rimurusan muttered, rubbing the back of his head. You can think about that later, Serafina replied, crossing her arms. For now, please focus on the matter at hand. Rimurusan sighed in defeat. Fine, fine. As we sat there waiting for the Queen, I couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration every time I looked at Serafina. She seemed so comfortable around Rimurusan, and he didn't seem to mind. Why did it bother me so much? I didn't understand this strange feeling, but I knew it wasn't going away anytime soon. Third person Pav, Rimuru, Yumilia, and Serafina had been waiting for about 10 minutes when the door finally opened. The Queen entered the room, accompanied by a young girl. The girl had long white hair and striking yellow eyes that bore a faint resemblance to Rimuru's and Serafina's glowing golden eyes, though hers lacked their luminescent quality. She had a reserved demeanor, and it was evident that she was still in her teenage years. This was Princess Ilaria, the youngest child of the royal family. Yumilia immediately stood up in respect, but Rimuru remained seated, his casual nature showing. As for Serafina, she didn't even acknowledge the Queen or the princess at all, her attitude as indifferent as ever. The Queen and Princess Ilaria took their seats. You don't have to be so formal, the queen said with a warm smile. This isn't an official meeting. Yumilia and Rimuru nodded, relaxing slightly. If I may, Yumilia said, her curiosity evident, is she your daughter, my lady? The queen nodded proudly. Yes, she is. Turning to her daughter, she added, why don't you introduce yourself, my dear? Princess Ilaria hesitated for a moment, then stood up, her shyness evident. I am Ilaria, the third child of the royal family, she said softly. I'm 16 years old. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir Rimuru and Lady Yumilia. Rimuru gave her an encouraging nod. That's an impressive introduction, I must say. Yumilia smiled and agreed. Princess Ilaria returned to her seat, her expression relaxing a little. Though still shy, she seemed more comfortable now. The queen broke the silence. Thank you for coming here to indulge my selfish request. It's not a problem, my lady, Rimuru and Yumilia replied simultaneously. The queen chuckled softly. I wanted to ask if either of you is familiar with the factions that operate within this kingdom. Rimuru and Yumilia exchanged puzzled looks. Serafina, however, wore a knowing smile. Actually, no, Rimuru admitted. I'm not familiar with them either, Yumilia added. The queen smiled warmly. If you'd like, I can explain. Both Rimuru and Yumilia nodded eagerly, prompting the queen to begin. The queen smiled gently as she began her explanation. In this kingdom, there are two major factions that dominate the political landscape, the king's faction and the anti-king faction. She leaned forward slightly, her tone calm yet serious. The king's faction is composed of nobles who are loyal to the kingdom and to his majesty. They prioritize the welfare of the nation, working to maintain peace and prosperity. These individuals are pillars of the kingdom's stability. Rimuru and Yumilia nodded, following her words intently. The anti-king faction, on the other hand, the queen continued, her expression darkening slightly, is made up of nobles who oppose the king's rule. They seek to amass power and wealth for themselves, often at the expense of the kingdom's well-being. Their ultimate goal is to weaken the king's authority and gain control over the government. Yumilia tensed visibly at the mention of the anti-king faction, her hands clenching slightly in her lap. The queen noticed this and offered a sympathetic look before addressing the elephant in the room. Miss Yumilia, your family, the Dolkness family, is a prominent member of the anti-king faction. Yumilia's eyes widened, and she quickly looked down. I don't agree with their ideals, my lady, she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I may be from that family, but I don't share their ambitions or their disregard for the kingdom's well-being. The queen nodded understandingly. I've heard as much, Miss Yumilia. Your reputation precedes you, and I believe in your sincerity. She then turned her attention to Rimuru. As for you, Sir Rimuru, your Tempest family is unique. You are neither part of the king's faction nor the anti-king faction. In fact, you are a neutral force, and that makes you a significant figure in this kingdom's political sphere. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. Neutral. That's an interesting way to describe it. I've just been minding my own business. The queen chuckled. Perhaps, but your mere presence disrupts the balance between these two factions. The king's faction sees you as a potential ally, someone who could bolster the kingdom's strength. The anti-king faction, however, likely views you as a threat to their ambitions. Yumilia looked at Rimuru with concern. That sounds like a lot of pressure. Rimuru shrugged. It's not like I asked for it, but I guess it's unavoidable. The queen continued. Understanding these factions is crucial, especially for individuals like yourselves, who are destined to shape the future of this kingdom. How you navigate these political waters will determine the course of not just your lives but the fate of the entire nation. Serafina, who had been silent until now, smirked. Master Rimuru doesn't need to navigate anything. If anyone tries to involve him in their petty schemes, they'll regret it. The queen smiled. I don't doubt Sir Rimuru's strength, but sometimes, battles are fought with words and influence rather than swords and magic. Rimuru sighed. Great. Politics. Just what I needed. The queen chuckled softly, her voice tinged with amusement. Consider it a challenge, Sir Rimuru. You've already proven yourself capable in so many ways. I'm confident you'll rise to this occasion as well. Princess Ilaria, who had been quietly listening, hesitantly spoke up. I believe in you too, Sir Rimuru. Her shy yet sincere words brought a rare, genuine smile to Rimuru's face. Thank you. Princess. I'll do my best. The atmosphere in the room softened as the queen clasped her hands together. That's enough of politics for now. Let's talk about something I truly want to discuss, she said with a warm, playful smile. Princess Ilaria, sitting beside her mother, glanced at the table and interjected shyly but firmly, Mother, tell them to enjoy those snacks. They're not for show, you know. Her voice was soft, but there was an undeniable note of earnestness in it. The queen chuckled softly, amusement dancing in her golden eyes. You're absolutely right, dear. She turned her attention to Rimuru and Yumilia, gesturing toward the assortment of delicacies on the table. As my daughter so wisely points out, please, enjoy yourselves. Don't let our conversation distract you from these treats. Yumilia, ever polite and composed, nodded graciously. She reached for a small pastry, holding it delicately between her fingers before taking a careful bite. Thank you, my lady, she said with a respectful bow of her head. Rimuru, however, looked at the table with a resigned expression and sighed. Well, I suppose I can't ignore royal hospitality, he said in an exaggerated tone, grabbing 2 snacks. Without hesitation, he popped one into his mouth, chewing thoughtfully before extending the second one toward Serafina. He held it mere inches from her lips, his hand steady and his expression unreadable. Serafina blinked in surprise, her cheeks tinged with a soft pink. Master, what are you doing? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Rimuru's golden eyes gleamed with mischief as he leaned closer. Feeding you, of course, he replied, his voice low and smooth, carrying a teasing warmth that made her heart skip a beat. You've been standing there quietly, looking like you're waiting for me to take care of you. So, here, open up. A quiet hush fell over the room, broken only by the soft rustling of fabric as Serafina hesitated for a moment before leaning forward. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes locked onto Rimuru's, as if gauging his sincerity. Finally, she took a delicate bite of the snack, her lips brushing against his fingers ever so lightly. Delicious, she murmured, her voice soft yet filled with pride. As expected, Master Rimuru always knows how to treat me. The moment was intimate, almost electric. Princess Ilaria gasped audibly, her face flushing a deep crimson as she clasped her hands together. I've only read about moments like this in romantic books, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced away quickly, hiding her face behind her hands, though she couldn't resist peeking through her fingers. Yumilia, who had been sipping her tea, froze mid-action. Her grip tightened slightly on the cup, her expression a mix of confusion and irritation. Why am I feeling so annoyed? She thought, her gaze flickering between Rimuru and Serafina. She couldn't help but blurt out, Rimuru-san, you seem very close to Serafina. Rimuru turned to her with a raised eyebrow, his lips curling into a faint smile. Close. That's one way to put it, he said, his tone both teasing and nonchalant. She is my maid, after all. The queen, watching the entire scene with great amusement, giggled softly. Sir Rimuru, you have a truly unique maid, she said, her voice laced with genuine fascination. It's rare to see such loyalty and intimacy. Rimuru leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other as he gave Serafina an indulgent look. Too much uniqueness, if you ask me, he said, his tone filled with playful affection. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Serafina's lips curled into a smug smile as she crossed her arms, her confidence radiating. Of course, master. I aim to stand out. The queen chuckled, clearly entertained by the banter. You certainly do, Lady Serafina. I must admit, it's refreshing to see someone who knows their worth so well. Meanwhile, Yumilia's irritation bubbled beneath the surface. She set her teacup down with slightly more force than necessary, muttering under her breath, intimacy, huh. That's one way to describe it. Princess Ilaria, still beatered, finally managed to find her voice. Sir Rimuru, Lady Serafina, you're like characters from one of my novels, she said timidly, her voice trembling with embarrassment. It's almost too much to watch. Rimuru turned to her with a soft laugh. I didn't realize we were providing live entertainment, he teased, a glint of amusement in his golden eyes. Should I start charging admission? The princess squeaked in response, covering her face entirely this time. Tu didn't mean it like that. She mumbled, her voice muffled behind her hands. Serafina, basking in the attention, glanced at Eumelia and Ilaria with a victorious smirk. Well, master, if you ever need more entertainment, you know who to rely on, she said with a wink, her voice dripping with confidence. Rimuru shook his head, though a small, amused smile played on his lips. Serafina, you're going to make my life a lot more complicated. That's my goal, master, she replied, her tone unapologetically flirtatious. The queen smiled warmly, clasping her hands as she leaned slightly forward. Now that we've eased into things, let's talk about what I truly want to discuss. Rimuru and Eumelia nodded, giving her their undivided attention. What is it that both of you truly need? The queen asked, her gaze shifting between them. Besides the requests you've already made to the king earlier. Eumelia, ever composed, spoke first. My queen, there's nothing more I wish for other than the chance to live in peace, she said sincerely. Princess Ilaria tilted her head, looking at Eumelia curiously. You're not like other nobles, she said softly. They're always after more power and wealth, yet you seem different. Eumelia smiled faintly and nodded at the princess. Thank you, Princess Ilaria. It's true I don't desire power or riches. I have all I need to live comfortably on my own. The queen then turned to Rimuru, her golden eyes glinting with curiosity. And you, Sir Rimuru? What is it that you truly want? Ilaria looked at Rimuru as well, her expression carrying a hint of intrigue and puzzlement, as though she couldn't quite figure him out. Rimuru leaned back slightly, his golden eyes calm but thoughtful. The same for me, my lady, he said with a small smile. Nothing more than what I've already requested from the king. Before anyone could respond, Serafina stepped forward, her voice laced with confidence and pride. Of course, Master doesn't need anything else, she declared. He already has power of his own. And if Master wished for wealth, he could create as much money as he desired without even lifting a finger. The queen giggled at Serafina's boldness. You have an extraordinary servant, Sir Rimuru. Her loyalty and confidence in you are truly remarkable. Ilaria looked between Eumelia and Rimuru, her expression thoughtful. You both seem so similar, she said quietly. Neither of you is driven by the usual ambitions of nobility. It's refreshing. Rimuru gave the princess a kind smile. Thank you for the compliment, Princess Ilaria, he said politely. Eumelia nodded in agreement, her voice soft but earnest. Thank you, Princess. It's kind of you to say that. The atmosphere lightened as the queen observed the group, a glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. It was clear that she had taken a liking to both Rimuru and Eumelia, and their candid responses had only deepened her interest. The queen leaned forward slightly, her expression calm but with a mischievous glint in her eyes. So, Eumelia, she began, her tone casual but curious. I'd like to ask you something. Eumelia straightened in her seat, meeting the queen's gaze. What might that be, my queen? The queen smiled lightly. If you like, I could arrange for you to marry into the royal family. The crown prince is an option, or perhaps my second son, Prince Edwin. The words had barely left the queen's lips when Eumelia, without even thinking, blurted out, No, thank you. Her voice rang out with such instinctive finality that the room fell completely silent. Rimuru, who had been sipping his tea, froze mid-sip, and even Serafina raised an eyebrow in surprise. Princess Ilaria blinked, clearly stunned. After a moment of tense silence, Ilaria finally spoke. You really rejected that offer, Miss Eumelia? She asked, her tone filled with disbelief. Eumelia's cheeks flushed, realizing how abrupt she had been. She quickly bowed her head slightly. I'm terribly sorry if that came off as rude, she said hurriedly. But I'm not interested in joining the royal family, nor am I interested in marrying someone, regardless of status. The queen, instead of being offended, giggled softly. I see, she said, her tone amused. But what would your family think of that decision? Eumelia sighed, looking slightly annoyed. They would insist I marry whoever they choose. If that happens, well, I don't know what I'd do, she admitted, crossing her arms with a slight pout. The queen leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look crossing her face. How about this, then? I could delay their insistence for a time. Would that help? Eumelia's eyes lit up with hope. Anything for that, she said immediately, her voice carrying a mix of relief and desperation. The queen chuckled again, clearly entertained. Eager, are we? Very well, I can grant you a 2-year reprieve. Is that enough time for you? Yumilia paused to think for a moment, then nodded firmly. Absolutely, my lady. 2 years would be perfect. Good, the queen said with a satisfied smile. I'll inform the king of this arrangement. Yumilia bowed slightly, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you so much, my queen. Rimuru, who had been silently observing the exchange, leaned toward Serafina with a sly grin. That was funnier than I expected, he whispered, earning a small smirk from his maid. Serafina, ever the troublemaker, leaned in closer and replied, it's a shame she didn't say yes. A royal wedding would have been quite the spectacle. Yumilia overheard and shot a quick glare at the two of them, her cheeks flushing again. Don't tease me, she huffed, making even Princess Ilaria giggle at her reaction. The queen leaned forward with a teasing smile. Now, Sir Rimuru, let's discuss something about you, she said. I propose my daughter, Ilaria, for marriage to you. Would you accept it? Serafina's expression darkened almost immediately, her golden eyes narrowing. Yumilia froze, her face contorting with shock before a dark shadow loomed over her features. Rimuru scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I don't think that's a good idea, my queen, he said carefully. Princess Ilaria's face fell, her expression dimming slightly. The queen tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Why is that? Do you think my daughter isn't good enough? Rimuru smiled gently, trying to diffuse the situation. Oh, no, that's not it at all. Princess Ilaria is a beautiful young woman. She's shy, kind, and honestly, quite adorable, if you ask me. At his words, Ilaria's face turned a deep shade of red, her hands flying up to hide her cheeks. She muttered something under her breath, her voice trembling. But, Rimuru trailed off. Ilaria peeked through her fingers. But, both Serafina and Yumilia turned their full attention to Rimuru, their gazes intense and focused, waiting for his answer. The queen leaned in slightly, her smile never wavering. What makes you reject her, Sir Rimuru? Rimuru let out a nervous chuckle. Well, let's just say I'm not as gentle with women as you might think. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly embarrassed. The room fell silent. Ilaria's blush deepened as she processed his words, her entire face now resembling a ripe tomato. Serafina and Yumilia, meanwhile, exchanged glances of visible relief. The queen raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. What exactly do you mean by that, Sir Rimuru? She asked, her tone playful. Rimuru sighed. What I mean is, on the outside, I might seem like a kind and considerate person, but the truth is, I can be pretty rough. Let's just say it wouldn't be a pleasant experience for someone who isn't used to that. The queen chuckled, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Oh, I see, she said, her voice laced with mischief. But what if I were to tell you that my daughter might enjoy that kind of roughness? Mother. Ilaria squeaked, covering her face with her hands. She practically radiated steam, her embarrassment evident as she tried to hide her face. Rimuru blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Well, that's a bit. I mean, he trailed off, clearly struggling to find the right words. Before he could continue, he added, but more importantly, there's a bigger issue here. I'm a target for many powerful factions. If anyone learns that Princess Ilaria is connected to me, they could use her against me. Or worse, harm her. Both Serafina and Yumilia nodded vehemently, speaking in unison. That's absolutely correct. The queen chuckled again, clearly unfazed. Unfortunately, I can't do much about that. But let me ask you something else, Sir Rimuru. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. My daughter will be attending the academy soon. I'd like her to stay under your protection. Even if that means she'll have to share your room. The room fell deathly silent. Serafina's jaw dropped, and her entire demeanor turned icy. My queen, she began, her voice carefully controlled but unmistakably firm. I don't believe that's appropriate. Sir Rimuru sharing a room with the princess, it's simply improper. Yumilia, meanwhile, clenched her fists on her lap, her face red with a mix of jealousy and frustration. My queen, with all due respect, she said, her voice tight. Wouldn't that put the princess in an even more compromising position? Ilaria, her face still flushed, glanced up shyly. Too mean, if it's necessary for my safety. Her voice wavered, betraying her embarrassment, but her tone hinted at some underlying excitement. Rimuru, on the other hand, froze completely. His brain seemed to shut down for a moment before he stammered, wait, hold on a second. Sharing a room. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? Surely there's another way to protect her. The queen tilted her head, her amusement growing. Is it that extreme, Sir Rimuru? You already have Serafina sharing your quarters, don't you? That's different. Rimuru protested. Serafina is my maid. The princess is royalty. It's not the same. Suddenly, Ciel's voice echoed in Rimuru's mind, her tone exasperated. Master, if you accept this arrangement, it will lead to numerous misunderstandings. Closing square bracket. Rimuru sighed inwardly. Yeah, I figured as much. If she stays in my room, it's pretty much unavoidable. It's not just that, Master. Agreeing to this would make it appear as though you're aligning yourself with one of the king's factions. Closing square bracket. Rimuru froze, his eyes narrowing. Wait, you're saying this could damage my reputation? Correct. Many will view this as favoritism or political maneuvering. It's a dangerous precedent to set, especially in this delicate environment. Closing square bracket. Rimuru groaned quietly, his fingers pressing against his temples. Great. As if I needed more complications. Let's see where this is going first. Meanwhile, Serafina crossed her arms, her golden eyes narrowed with disapproval as she gave Rimuru a pointed look. Master, surely you understand how improper this arrangement would be. I cannot allow it. Yumilia stepped forward, her jealousy barely concealed beneath a forced smile. I have to agree with Serafina. It's completely inappropriate, my queen. Surely there are other ways to ensure Princess Ilaria's safety. The queen leaned back in her chair, a sly smile on her lips as she observed the growing tension in the room. Well, Sir Rimuru, what will you do? The decision is ultimately yours. Ilaria hesitated, her face burning red as she glanced up at Rimuru. Her voice was soft and filled with a mix of hope and embarrassment. Too mean, if it's not too much trouble, I wouldn't mind. She quickly looked away, fidgeting nervously with her hands. Rimuru sighed deeply, burying his face in his hands. This is going to be a nightmare, isn't it? The room fell into a heavy silence as everyone processed the queen's audacious proposal. Serafina was the first to react, stepping forward with a strained smile that barely masked her frustration. My queen, she began, her voice tight and controlled, this arrangement is utterly inappropriate. Sir Rimuru is, well, her composure cracked, and she blurted, a man. Yumilia's cheeks flushed as she quickly chimed in. Exactly. No offense, my queen, but wouldn't it make more sense for the princess to have her own quarters? With proper security, of course. Her voice carried an edge, her unease plain to see. Ilaria, already red-faced, glanced between the queen and Rimuru nervously. Too mean, if my safety is truly at stake, then staying close to Sir Rimuru might be the best option, she said softly. Though her tone seemed innocent, her darting eyes and shy smile hinted at something else entirely. Rimuru groaned aloud, leaning back in his chair and running a hand through his hair. Hold on a second. Let's not jump to conclusions. Isn't there another way to ensure Princess Ilaria's safety? What about a private suite nearby? Or extra guards? Or, I don't know, literally anything else. The queen tapped her chin thoughtfully, her mischievous glint returning. I suppose there are alternatives. But none would guarantee her safety as well as having her under your direct protection. Besides, she added with a teasing smile, it would be an excellent opportunity for her to get to know you better. Serafina narrowed her eyes, her tone sharp. Master, this arrangement is highly irregular. Surely you can see that. Yumilia folded her arms, muttering under her breath, highly irregular doesn't even begin to describe it. Ilaria's blush deepened as she fidgeted with her dress. Two don't want to impose, of course, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But, if it's necessary, I'll accept it. Though her words sounded hesitant, the faint smile playing on her lips revealed a subtle excitement. Rimuru sighed and called out to Ciel in his mind. Ciel, help me out here. Seriously. Master, even I find this suggestion ridiculous, Ciel replied, her voice sharper than usual. Keeping the princess this close. It's entirely unnecessary. You could solve this with a simple barrier spell or, better yet, by assigning her to her own room near yours. This is absurd. Closing square bracket closing square bracket. Rimuru felt a surge of relief. Finally, we're on the same page. Please tell me you have a plan to get me out of this mess. Of course, master. But, you'll have to trust me on this. Follow my lead. Closing square bracket closing square bracket. Rimuru smirked inwardly. Alright, Seal. Let's see what you've got. The room hung in tense silence as Serafina crossed her arms and fixed Rimuru with a pointed stare. Master, surely you understand how improper this arrangement would be. I cannot allow it. Yumilia nodded sharply, her expression tense. It's completely inappropriate, my queen. Surely, there are better ways to ensure Princess Ilaria's safety. Ilaria glanced up shyly, her cheeks flushed. Two don't want to cause any trouble, but if staying near Sir Rimuru ensures my safety, I'll do it. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the hint of hope in her tone didn't go unnoticed. The queen's smile widened, clearly enjoying the unfolding chaos. Well, Sir Rimuru, what will it be? It's ultimately your decision. Rimuru sighed, feeling the weight of their expectant gazes. Finally, he spoke, clearing his throat. I appreciate your concern, Your Majesty, but... Master, deploy the plan now, Ciel's voice advised in his mind. Rimuru smirked inwardly, following her lead. He looked directly at the queen. Quote. I think there's a better way to handle this. The queen tilted her head, intrigued. Oh, and what might that be? Well, Rimuru began, pretending to ponder the question deeply. Rather than sharing a room, wouldn't it be better to assign Princess Ilaria her own quarters nearby? We could reinforce her room with a protective barrier, and I could even have Serafina stay with her for added security. The queen blinked, her surprise evident. Serafina, you say? That does sound effective. Ciel's voice chimed again in Rimuru's mind. Master, I suggest adding a playful comment to lighten the mood. Closing square bracket closing square bracket. Rimuru chuckled softly. Got it, Ciel. He turned to the queen, his lips curving into a mischievous smile. Of course, I'm also fine with sharing a room with her. But I'm afraid if that happened, I might not be able to hold back. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavily. Serafina was the first to react, stepping closer to Rimuru with an icy glare. What might you mean by that, my lord? She asked, her voice cold as frost. Rimuru's grin didn't falter. You know exactly what I mean, Serafina. Her face turned a faint shade of pink as realization dawned, and Yumilia's jaw dropped. Rri Murusan, she exclaimed, her cheeks blazing red. How can you say something like that so casually? The queen, on the other hand, giggled softly, clearly amused. Oh, I don't mind if something like that happens between the two of you. Master, she is. Rimuru cut Ciel off before she could finish. I know, Ciel. Trust me. Opening square bracket closing square bracket closing square bracket. Rimuru turned back to the queen, his tone shifting to serious. But, my queen, such an arrangement would damage my reputation. Not just mine but also the reputation of the Tempest family and the Nova clan. I can't allow that to happen. The queen's playful demeanor faltered as she sighed in defeat. I see. I hadn't considered that. Ilaria's blush faded slightly, but a flicker of disappointment crossed her face. Yumilia seized the moment, stepping forward. My queen, why don't we go with Rimurusan's plan? It's practical and avoids any unnecessary misunderstandings. Serafina nodded, her tone firm. Yes, I can stay with her. That won't damage my master's reputation or mine. The queen glanced at Ilaria, her expression softening. What do you think, my dear? Is that acceptable? Ilaria hesitated before nodding slowly, though her expression remained faintly unsatisfied. I'm okay with it, mother. Good, the queen said with a satisfied nod. Go pack your belongings. You'll head to the prestigious academy tomorrow with Sir Rimuru and Miss Yumilia. Ilaria stood, curtsying gracefully. As you wish, mother. She cast one last glance at Rimuru before leaving the room. As the door closed behind her, Rimuru sighed, muttering to himself, crisis averted. Ciel's voice echoed in his mind, her tone laced with amusement. Master, your ability to navigate chaos is truly something. But next time, perhaps don't incite it yourself. Closing square bracket closing square bracket. Rimuru chuckled, running a hand through his hair. Where's the fun in that, Seal. The queen clapped her hands, drawing everyone's attention. Great. Now that this is settled, there's one more thing I'd like to discuss. Yumilia and Rimuru exchanged glances before asking in unison, and what might that be? The queen's expression turned serious. 2 years from now, a demon lord will awaken. Yumilia and Serafina's faces darkened immediately, understanding the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Rimuru leaned back in his chair, his mind elsewhere, casually plotting ways to cancel the earlier arrangement. The queen continued. My son, Edwin, is assembling a team to defeat this demon lord. Suddenly, Rimuru burst out laughing, startling everyone in the room. I'm sorry, he said between chuckles. Prince Edwin leading a team to defeat a demon lord. That's never going to happen. Yumilia sighed heavily, her exasperation evident. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Rimuru-san. They're simply not strong enough for such a task. The queen's expression remained calm, but her tone grew more determined. Which is why I'm asking the two of you to assist them. Help Edwin's team succeed, but let him take the credit as the one who defeats the demon lord. Yumilia frowned, processing the queen's request. So, essentially, you want us to do the heavy lifting and let Prince Edwin take the glory. The queen nodded firmly. Precisely. Edwin will be the future king of this kingdom in the near future, and I want to ensure he has a strong reputation. Rimuru smirked, leaning forward with a playful yet sharp edge in his tone. If I wanted to, I could just kill the demon lord instantly. I don't see why I should do all the hard work just to let Edwin take the credit. The queen's gaze sharpened. Because Edwin must build his reputation as a strong and capable leader. This will ensure the kingdom's stability when he takes the throne. Serafina crossed her arms, a small frown on her lips. Master, the queen essentially wants you to boost the prince's reputation. Rimuru's smirk faded as his mood shifted, becoming colder and more serious. I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. The room fell silent. The queen looked at him intently. If I may ask, Sir Rimuru, why is that? Serafina broke the silence. My queen, my master has a reason. Please, master, explain. Rimuru nodded, his golden eyes glowing faintly as he spoke with icy calm. I have no intention of boosting the reputation of someone who's already tried to antagonize me and Yumichi. Prince Edwin even attempted to have both of us removed from the academy. Why would I go out of my way to help someone like that? The queen opened her mouth to respond, but Rimuru cut her off sharply. No, I will kill the demon lord myself. And I'll tell you why. Because I am the demon lord. Yumilia gasped softly, her eyes wide. Rimuru-san, are you sure about this? Rimuru's gaze softened slightly as he turned to her. I'm completely sure, Yumichi. The queen sighed, a resigned smile on her face. It seems my son has made an enemy out of you, hasn't he, Sir Rimuru? Rimuru's tone turned neutral. Not an enemy, nor an ally. My queen, I'm simply, me. The queen studied him for a moment before finally sighing. Very well. Thank you for coming here, you two. Rimuru's playful smirk returned. Anytime, my queen. Yumilia bowed her head politely. It's not a problem, Your Majesty. The queen stood and excused herself from the room, leaving the three alone. Yumilia turned to Rimuru, her voice soft but curious. Rimuru-san, how can you remain so calm and playful in a situation like this? Rimuru smiled, his golden eyes meeting hers directly. Yumichi, there's nothing in this world that can surpass me. For a moment, Yumilia found herself captivated by the glow of his golden eyes. A shiver ran down her spine, though she wasn't sure if it was fear, awe, or something else entirely. Serafina finally broke the silence, her tone quieter now but still carrying a teasing edge. Master, you're really enjoying this, aren't you? Rimuru leaned back in his chair with a relaxed smile. You have no idea. But honestly, who wouldn't? Master, Ciel's voice rang in his mind, her tone exasperated but resigned. You've managed to turn this into a spectacle. Still, don't forget, there's a demon lord to handle. Closing square bracket. Rimuru chuckled, brushing her comment aside. You're right, Ciel. But admit it, this is far more entertaining than expected. We'll deal with the demon lord when the time comes. The grand castle loomed behind them, a testament to power and prestige. Its towering spires pierced the azure sky, each adorned with banners bearing the royal insignia. The stone walls, polished to an almost mirror-like sheen, reflected the golden glow of the morning sun. Intricate carvings of mythical beasts and ancient symbols adorned the massive gates, which stood open to reveal the cobblestone courtyard bustling with servants and guards. Despite its beauty, the atmosphere in front of the castle was heavy with emotion. Standing near the carriage, Rimuru, Eumelia, and Serafina waited in silence as king and queen prepared to bid farewell to their daughter, Princess Ilaria. The young princess, dressed in a delicate yet practical travel gown, stood nervously before her mother, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. The queen placed a gentle hand on Ilaria's shoulder. "Stay safe, my dear. This is a great opportunity for you to grow and learn." Ilaria hesitated, then leaned closer to her mother, whispering, "Mother, I'm nervous." Queen smiled warmly, her voice soft and reassuring. "That's only natural, my love. Just be yourself. You're stronger than you think." The princess hesitated again before whispering, her cheeks flushed, "Mother, do you think I can make Sir Rimuru fall for me?" Clarissa's eyes sparkled with amusement. Leaning closer, she whispered back, "Oh, my dear, with your charm and determination, I'm sure you'll do just fine. Give it your best." Ilaria nodded, her resolve seemingly strengthened. "I will, mother. I'll do what I can." They embraced tightly before Ilaria moved to her father. King placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his expression stern but affectionate. "Be safe, Ilaria. Learn well, and don't cause trouble for anyone, especially Sir Rimuru and Miss Eumelia." "Yes, father," Ilaria replied with a respectful nod before hugging him. Meanwhile, in Rimuru's mind, Ciel's voice rang with urgency. "Master. Closing square bracket. Yes, Ciel. What is it?" Rimuru asked, glancing casually at the royal family. "That princess is plotting something. Closing square bracket. Rimuru chuckled inwardly. "Don't worry, Ciel. I have you, so no one can fool me, right?" "That's true, but please be careful. Closing square bracket. Come on, Ciel, don't worry so much. You're my trusty first wife, after all." I understand, master. Closing square bracket. Rimuru smirked. "That's my Ciel. By the way, do you think Serafina knows about you?" "No, master. Why do you ask?" Closing square bracket. "Just a feeling. She's sharp, you know. I haven't revealed myself to her, but I may have heightened her intelligence slightly. She'll notice eventually. Closing square bracket. Interesting." Rimuru's attention shifted to Eumelia, who seemed lost in thought. "Yume-chan, what's on your mind?" he asked gently. Eumelia snapped out of her reverie, her cheeks tinged pink. "Nothing at all, Rimuru-san. Never mind." Rimuru chuckled lightly. "If you say so." He extended his hand to her, and she hesitated briefly before taking it. Together, they stepped into the carriage. Turning to the princess, Rimuru called, "Princess Ilaria, shall we?" Ilaria glanced back at her parents, embracing them one last time before turning to Rimuru. "Yes, Sir Rimuru." She accepted his hand, her cheeks slightly pink, and stepped into the carriage to sit beside Eumelia. Finally, Rimuru turned to Serafina, who stood quietly to the side. He offered his hand to her with a teasing smile. "Shall we, Serafina?" Serafina's stoic expression faltered as a faint blush crept onto her cheeks. She accepted his hand and gracefully stepped into the carriage, sitting across from Eumelia and Ilaria. Rimuru climbed in last, settling beside Serafina and closing the door. Ilaria leaned out briefly to wave goodbye to her parents. The king and queen stood side by side, watching the carriage as it began to move, carrying their daughter and her companions toward the prestigious academy. The carriage rolled forward, its wheels gliding smoothly over the cobblestone courtyard and toward the grand castle gate. The towering structure opened slowly, allowing them to pass through. Guards saluted respectfully as the carriage moved out of the castle grounds. Beyond the gate, the lively streets of the main city came into view. Vendors called out to passers-by, children ran and played, and citizens bustled about their daily lives. As the carriage left the city behind, the landscape changed dramatically. The bustling streets gave way to open fields, dotted with wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. A dense forest lined the horizon, its tall trees standing proudly like sentinels guarding the beauty within. The air grew fresher, filled with the earthy scent of greenery. Birds chirped melodiously, and sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Inside the carriage, Princess Ilaria gazed out of the window in awe. "This is the first time I've ever been outside the main city," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. She leaned closer to the window, taking a deep breath of the pure, untainted air. "It's so beautiful and relaxing." Serafina, ever the vigilant maid, gave her a small smile. "It is, Lady Ilaria. But please, be careful." Ilaria nodded and returned to her seat, her gaze still lingering on the lush scenery outside. "Nature is beautiful," she said, almost to herself. Eumelia, seated beside her, spoke up. "Nature is beautiful and dangerous at the same time." Her tone was unusually cold, and her normally composed expression was even more severe than usual. Rimuru noticed and tilted his head, concern evident in his voice. "Is something wrong, Yume-chan?" Eumelia hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "Nothing special," she replied. "But I have an uncomfortable feeling." Princess Ilaria looked at her with concern. "Are you feeling unwell, Lady Eumelia?" Eumelia shook her head again, offering a faint smile. "No, I think I'm just a bit tired from traveling." Serafina, sitting opposite her, chimed in. "Perhaps. But I recommend you rest for a while, Lady Eumelia." Eumelia nodded slightly, leaning back in her seat. "You might be right." Rimuru watched her closely, then leaned forward. "Yume-chan, do you want something? Water, maybe?" Eumelia's cheeks turned a faint shade of pink at his attention. She shook her head quickly, her voice quieter than before. "No, I'm fine, Rimuru-san." Turning away, she looked out the window, trying to distract herself from her racing thoughts. The carriage continued its journey, the serene beauty of the forest surrounding them like a protective embrace. Yet, despite the peaceful atmosphere, an unspoken tension lingered in the air. Rimuru's golden eyes flickered briefly, a subtle hint that he was already aware of more than he let on. The carriage moved steadily, the rhythmic sound of wheels against the dirt road filling the silence inside. Rimuru sat comfortably, glancing between the three women seated with him. Sensing the growing quiet, he decided to break it. "So," Rimuru began with a playful grin, "any thoughts on our journey so far? It's not every day we get to enjoy nature like this." Ilaria's face lit up with excitement. "It's beautiful, Sir Rimuru. I've never seen such open fields and forests before. It's like stepping into a dream." She clasped her hands together, looking outside the window. "I can see why people say nature is relaxing." Eumelia, still gazing out of her window, added in her usual cold tone, "Relaxing, yes. But also unpredictable. Beauty often hides danger, Princess Ilaria." Ilaria blinked, tilting her head curiously. "You seem worried, Lady Eumelia. Do you think we're in danger?" Before Eumelia could respond, Serafina leaned slightly forward, her crimson eyes fixated on Rimuru. Her voice was low and sultry as she spoke. "There's no need for concern, Lady Ilaria. With Master Rimuru here, nothing could dare threaten us. His strength is unparalleled." Her tone carried a hint of adoration as she added, "Isn't that right, Master?" Rimuru chuckled lightly, scratching the back of his head. "Well, I wouldn't say I'm unbeatable, but I'd like to think I can handle most things." Serafina leaned closer, her gaze unwavering. "You're far too humble, Master. The truth is, you are unrivaled. Anyone or anything that dares oppose you would be foolish." Eumelia shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing slightly as she glanced at Serafina. "That's quite the praise, Serafina. Don't you think you're being a bit excessive?" Serafina didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled slyly and replied, "I'm merely stating facts, Lady Eumelia. Master deserves recognition for his greatness. It's only natural to admire someone so exceptional." Ilaria watched the exchange with wide eyes, her cheeks slightly pink. "Sir Rimuru is very impressive, isn't he? I mean, to be so strong and kind at the same time, it's no wonder you're so admired." Rimuru raised an eyebrow, his golden eyes flickering mischievously. "You're all making me sound much better than I am. Careful, or you'll give me a big head." Eumelia crossed her arms, her expression softening slightly. "You're not exactly modest, Rimuru-san. You enjoy the attention far more than you let on." Serafina smirked and leaned back, her posture relaxed but still radiating elegance. "And why shouldn't he? Master deserves admiration from all who know him. It's only right. Her voice dropped slightly, her gaze softening as she added, after all, he's the one who gave my life meaning. The atmosphere in the carriage grew heavier at her words. Rimuru's playful expression faltered for a moment, replaced by a more thoughtful look. Serafina, you don't have to go that far. You've always been capable on your own. I just gave you a little push. Serafina shook her head, her eyes shimmering with an intensity that made even Yumilia glance away. No, Master. You gave me more than that. You gave me purpose, a reason to serve and protect. For that, I am forever yours. Alaria's face flushed a deep red, her gaze darting between Serafina and Rimuru. Two didn't realize you two were so close. Rimuru coughed awkwardly, raising a hand. Let's not get carried away, Serafina. I appreciate your loyalty, but there's no need to be so dramatic. Yumilia let out a small sigh, resting her chin on her hand. You really do attract all kinds of devotion, Rimuru-san. It's almost unsettling how easily people flock to you. Rimuru smirked, his playful demeanor returning. What can I say? I guess I have a certain charm. Serafina chuckled softly, her voice as smooth as silk. That you do, Master. That you do. Meanwhile, in the king and queen. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the large windows of the castle's meeting room, casting a warm glow on the polished floors. The king stood near the window, his hands clasped behind his back, gazing out thoughtfully. The queen sat on a plush chair nearby, her expression pensive as she sipped from a porcelain cup. Breaking the silence, the king turned to his wife. You met with them yesterday. How did it go? The queen set her cup down gently, her lips curling into a wry smile. It was a half success, half failure. The king raised an eyebrow, walking closer to her. What do you mean by that? She leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant as she chose her words. Exactly as it sounds. While some things went as planned, others did not. The king took a seat across from her, his curiosity evident. Did you explain the factions to them? The queen nodded. Yes, I did. I outlined the roles their families play in the power structure and what is expected of them. The king's gaze sharpened. And their response? The queen sighed, folding her hands in her lap. Rimuru wasn't interested. He made it abundantly clear that he has no intention of aligning himself with any faction, especially not one tied to the royal family. The king frowned slightly. And the girl, Yumilia. She's different, the queen admitted, her expression softening. She's nothing like her family. In fact, she explicitly said that she desires a quiet, peaceful life away from politics and power plays. The king leaned back, his brows furrowing in thought. That's surprising. For someone from a family like hers to say that. The queen nodded. Trust me, I was just as surprised. She even said she doesn't want to marry, not even into a royal family. She values her independence above all else. The king's eyes widened in shock. She outright said that. She did. The queen sighed deeply, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. And honestly, I can't blame her. It's clear she's been pressured enough by her family. I promised her I'd do what I can to delay any engagement her family might try to force on her. At least for 2 years. The king smiled faintly. That was kind of you. It must be a relief for her to have someone in her corner. The queen nodded. I believe she's pure-hearted. She carries herself with dignity, but there's a vulnerability there. I want to help her. She could be a good influence on Ilaria, perhaps even a close friend. The king tapped his fingers on the armrest, considering her words. And what of Rimuru? What impression did he leave? The queen's expression turned more serious. Rimuru is intriguing. He's not someone to be underestimated, that much is certain. His playful demeanor masks a sharp mind and incredible power. I couldn't sway him with the prospect of political alliances or titles. He made it clear he's only here to fulfill his own interests. The king nodded slowly. He's not a man to be controlled, then. Exactly, the queen agreed. But at the same time, he's not our enemy. He's more focused on protecting those close to him, like Yumilia. The king sighed, rubbing his temple. That could be both a blessing and a challenge. We'll need to tread carefully around him. The queen smiled faintly. Indeed. For now, we should focus on Ilaria. Let's hope she and Yumilia can form a genuine bond. That might be our best path forward. The king nodded, his expression thoughtful as he gazed back out the window. Let's hope so. The queen leaned back in her chair, a knowing smile gracing her lips as she exchanged a glance with her husband. Her tone carried both amusement and a hint of worry. By the way, she began, it seems our daughter has set her sights on someone she wishes to make her own. The king raised an eyebrow, puzzled. What do you mean? The queen's smile deepened, though her tone became more serious. I mean, our little girl has either fallen for someone, or found a new toy for her game. The king leaned forward, his expression darkening. Who are you talking about? Rimuru Tempest, the queen replied softly, the dragon prince. The king's eyes widened in shock, and he stiffened in his seat. This could be bad. Very bad. If she sees him as a pawn, we might be in grave danger. The queen nodded solemnly. I told her as much, but she said there's no need to worry. Flashback. The queen strode gracefully through the castle's grand hallway, her steps echoing softly against the marble floors. She had just finished an audience and was making her way to the meeting room to greet her esteemed guests, Rimuru Tempest and Yumali Adultness. As she turned a corner, a firm yet gentle hand grasped her wrist. She stopped abruptly, her heart skipping a beat as she turned to see who had stopped her. Her expression softened slightly as she recognized the person. Ilaria. The queen asked, surprised to see her daughter there. Is something the matter, my dear? Ilaria shook her head, her yellow eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. No, mother. I was just wondering. Where are you going? The queen's expression relaxed as she offered a warm smile. I'm heading to the meeting room. I have some guests to welcome. Ilaria tilted her head, her tone laced with curiosity. Would these guests happen to be Rimuru Tempest and Yumali Adultness? The queen stiffened for a moment, her smile faltering. Her thoughts raced. How does she know? Could she have been watching all this time? Taking a steadying breath, the queen asked carefully, were you watching us during the audience? Ilaria nodded, her expression calm and candid. Yes, I was hiding behind your throne, mother. I didn't want to disturb you. The queen sighed inwardly, brushing aside her unease. I see. So, what is it that you want, my dear? Ilaria hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice steady yet carrying an unexpected boldness. Mother, I know this may sound audacious, but I want that person. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Who do you mean? Ilaria's gaze turned sharper, her voice dropping to a whisper. Rimuru Tempest. The queen's expression froze, panic flashing across her features. Do you see him as a pawn? Because if you do, let me warn you, he is not a normal person. If he becomes tied to the energy of this kingdom, it could spell disaster for all of us. Do you understand? Ilaria's confidence did not waver. Don't worry, mother. There's no way something like that will happen. I just need your help. The queen's brow furrowed. Help? What exactly are you asking of me? Ilaria's lips curled into a faint smile. Next, I'll be attending the prestigious academy, just like my brother. Sir Rimuru is going to that academy too, isn't he? The queen nodded slowly, still processing her daughter's words. Yes, he is. Ilaria's eyes sparkled with determination. Then allow me to go with him. I want Sir Rimuru to fall for me, no matter what it takes. The queen's heart sank as she studied her daughter. Are you sure about this? The Tempest family is one of the most powerful bloodlines in existence, and the Nova clan that serves them is exceptionally dangerous. Ilaria nodded firmly. I understand, mother. I know what I'm getting into. The queen let out a heavy sigh, her maternal concern evident in her voice. Very well, I'll help you. But tell me, why him? Is it because of his appearance? Or his power? Ilaria shook her head, her eyes suddenly glowing a bright, unnatural blue. Neither. It's because I saw something with my eyes. The queen gasped, taking a step back. Misfit eyes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You used those eyes on him. Misfit eyes, also known as God eyes, are not divine but are named for their unique ability to perceive mysterious truths about others. However, understanding these truths is exceedingly difficult. The counter to this ability is the phantom eyes, a power often referred to as demon eyes. Those who possess phantom eyes can create illusions so powerful that even the misfit eyes cannot break through them. Additionally, phantom eyes allow their user to manipulate the thoughts of those weaker or equal in strength to them. Historically, only 3 individuals have possessed misfit eyes: the kingdom's first king, Princess Ilaria, and an unknown figure from a no-forgotten clan. Similarly, phantom eyes have only appeared twice in history, once in the first Demon Lord and once in his most trusted subordinate. Ilaria nodded, her glowing eyes fading back to their usual yellow. Yes, Mother. I used my misfit eyes on him. The queen felt a cold shiver run down her spine, fear mingling with awe. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? She asked, her voice trembling. Ilaria's confident smile remained. I'm not worried, Mother. I'll take care of everything. The queen could only stare at her daughter, her mind racing with questions and concerns about the storm that might follow. The queen sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly, before she asked, "What did you see with those eyes of yours?" Ilaria's expression turned thoughtful. I don't fully understand it myself, but I like what I saw. That's why I want him. The queen studied her daughter carefully, trying to gauge her sincerity. I see, she replied cautiously. Ilaria continued, her voice growing more persuasive. Think about it, Mother. If Sir Rimuru were to fall for me, wouldn't that make us more powerful? The safety of our kingdom would be absolute. The queen considered this for a moment before speaking. You might have a point, but I don't want to force him into anything. After all, he is the last of the noble Tempest lineage. Ilaria nodded eagerly. Exactly. If he falls for me willingly, it would secure the Tempest family's lineage and guarantee the safety of everything. The queen hesitated, concern flickering across her face. But, she began, only to be interrupted by Ilaria. Mother, please, Ilaria pleaded, her tone softening. I want this. The queen sighed deeply, her resolve wavering. Fine, I'll help you. But remember this, I won't force him. Do you understand? Ilaria's face lit up with a triumphant smile as she nodded. Of course, Mother. Satisfied for now, the queen and Ilaria made their way to the meeting room. Unknown to the queen, Ilaria allowed herself a brief, sinister smile, a look that went unnoticed or unmentioned. End of flashback. So that's what happened, the king said after hearing the queen's explanation. The queen nodded, her expression troubled. Yes. But truthfully, I don't know what she's planning to do. The king leaned back in his chair, his gaze dark. Let's hope she doesn't make an enemy of Rimuru. The queen agreed, her tone weary. We can only hope. The king then changed the topic, his brows furrowed. What about asking for their help to defeat the Demon Lord? The queen sighed. Yumilia said it wouldn't be an issue, but Rimuru refused. The king's face darkened. Did he give a reason? The queen nodded. Yes. He said Edwin antagonized him and Yumilia during their time at the academy. Apparently, Edwin even tried to have them expelled. Honestly, I can't fault Sir Rimuru for his decision. The king sighed, frustration evident in his tone. I agree. Edwin's been using the royal name for his own foolish antics. Why can't he be more like his older brother, Aldrich? The queen chuckled softly, a hint of amusement in her voice. They may both be our children, but Edwin and Aldrich couldn't be more different. Even so, they're still ours. The king shook his head with a resigned smile. You're right. Let's just hope Edwin doesn't do anything stupid like that again. The queen nodded, her expression serious. Yes, for all our sakes, I hope so too.